So Julie is now Julie Palmer, who's a very important support person for us in the leadership group. And she's going to give us an update on the funding decisions for the budget 2022. So kia ora, Julie, nice to see you.
Thanks, Teresa. Thanks very much. I'll share my screen. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Julie Palmer tuku ingoa, no te tai tokura o e noho ana o whangare. He hōtaka whakahaere o I te tima o so kaumātuatanga ora. I'm a program manager in the healthy aging team at Te Whatu Ora. Thank you to the team at New Zealand Dementia Foundation for all the work that they've done to organise this hui, and for providing an opportunity for me to provide an update to you all about the Dementia Mate Wareware initiative, the commissioning program that we undertook, and the outcomes from our collaborative work with Te Whatu Ora, Te Whakaruru Mo Te Mate Wareware, the Dementia Leadership and Advisory Group, and the Te Tohonga Mo Te Mate Wareware, the Dementia Mate Wareware Network. So thank you. So the driving force behind this mahi for the Dementia Mate Wareware initiative was the creation of the Dementia Action Plan, which was developed by the 4 national dementia organisations: Dementia New Zealand, Alzheimer's New Zealand, the New Zealand Dementia Foundation, and the Mate Wareware Advisory Ropu, on behalf of and with input and support from the wider dementia sector. And the vision, just to recap for you, is that an Aotearoa New Zealand in which Mate Wareware is prevented as much as possible, and where people living with Mate Wareware, their whānau and carers, care partners, receive the support that they need to live their best possible lives with autonomy, meaning and dignity. And the objectives for the action plan, which is informing all the work that the leadership group and the network are focusing on, is to strengthen leadership across the dementia sector, to support people who are living with Mate Wareware, their family and whānau and care partners, to live their best possible lives, to reduce the incidence of Mate Wareware, and to build accepting and more understanding communities. And so those first 2 have been the initial priority for this work program, which is setting up the Mate Wareware governance ecosystem, the governance structure and the leadership group, and then doing the Budget 22 commissioning program. So what I'm just going to do now is give you a brief overview of the process that we've gone through, because all of you probably, this has touched your lives in some way, and I'm sure you're very interested to know how we got to where we got to, and should the situation arise again where further funding is available, you'll be well prepared to participate. So let's see. So I'm just going to focus on the priority areas for this Budget 22 initiative, which were agreed by the government and reflect the priorities in the Dementia Action Plan, are that post-diagnostic supports, dementia navigators, and innovative respite care options. So those were the 3 areas that the Budget 22 initiative was going to be focused on. And priority populations that the program was focused on was people living with dementia, Māori, Pacific, people living in rural areas, and people with younger onset. So we had what we were going to be commissioning and who we were going to be focusing on. I might make it. So a summary, the commissioning process was developed, agreed, and undertaken in partnership with Te Whatu Ora. The feedback from the Dementia Leadership Group and the network on what we needed, what Te Whatu and Te Aka needed to take account of, that feedback was incorporated into the commissioning documents, and I want to acknowledge the time that everybody gave to that process over January and February. It was, it required a lot of coordination and focus and cooperation between the New Zealand Dementia Foundation, who was leading that process, and everybody in the network and the leadership group. There were a lot of tight time frames, and everybody was pushed, but everybody did a really great job, and we got the feedback from the sector, and that feedback was put through to shared with Te Whatu Ora and Te Whatu Ora, and all of the recommendations were accepted, and they were incorporated into the commissioning documents for the budget initiative. We undertook a two-stage commissioning process, and that was so that the thinking behind that was so that stage one, which was the registration of interest, was intended to be a light approach, so that because it's acknowledged that submitting RFPs and expressions of interest and all that kind of process takes a lot of resource from organisations, and organisations don't necessarily have that capability within their teams. I acknowledge that. So by having a sort of light process, it meant that more organisations could submit their proposals and be considered. So the whole procurement, the whole commissioning process was led by a senior procurement advisor in Te Whatu Ora. We created an independent evaluation panel with great experience, knowledge and expertise around the treaty, around equity, around Te Ao Māori, around whānau-centred services, around health services commissioning, and around primary care. So we feel we were comfortable that we had the right knowledge and expertise in the room to evaluate the proposals. And every single proposal that was received, we received, I think it's 73 ROIs. Every single one was reviewed by each member of the evaluation panel. And the process was that their scores were all collected together and their comments. And then as a panel, the group came together and discussed every single application. And it was very hard for the panel because there were a lot of really great applications. Just to say at this point that the applications far exceeded the budget that we had available. So it was a hard task for the panel, but the lead for it steered the panel and helped them make those, helped keep everyone on track. From that process, there was a shortlisting of the highest scoring ROIs, and then those that have been successful in the ROI stage were invited to submit a more comprehensive, detailed RFP. And from that process, it was a similar evaluation process. The evaluation panel individually reviewed, scored each RFP, and then they came together as a group and discussed each proposal, and then made decisions and made recommendations of the proposals that they thought should be funded. And those recommendations then went to Te Whatu Ora and Te Whatu Ora directors of commissioning with the recommendations and the rationale for the recommendations, and those recommendations were endorsed. And it was from that we now have 7 trials funded. 5 of them are for post-diagnostic supports and navigation services, and 2 of them are for respite care. So I just want to reiterate that there was a really great and strong response from the sector. People put in a huge amount of work and thought into this. And if the panel could have, they certainly would have liked to have approved more. And we did request more funding, but at this point in time, we're advised that the additional funding isn't available. For some, we actually said, if additional funding is made available, we will come back to you. At this point in time, we haven't been able to do that. But yeah, I can't really say any more than that at this point in time.
What a Julie, thank you. Oh, you're going to go through the
Yeah, I'll just for people who don't know, just to say that for the 5 post-diagnostic supports, I'll just very briefly say that we have 1 in Northland, Te Whatu Ora or Ngāpuhi. We have 1 in Auckland, which is the Aotearoa Tongan Health Workers Association, and we have Maka, the CEO from the Tongan Health Workers Association, online today, and he's going to talk a little bit about this. We have the Manaaki Ora Trust, which is across the Rotorua district, Te Puna Ora or Matatua Charitable Trust in the Eastern Bay of Plenty. And Dementia Canterbury is collaborating with Purapura Whetū Trust in the Canterbury region. So those are the 5 trials. I'm very happy to share these slides with you. And just to say that we are preparing sort of really good paragraphs that we'll share with the New Zealand Dementia Foundation, and they'll be able to go up on the ecosystem website so that people can get a little bit more understanding about what the model of care is and where the services are being delivered by these organisations and who they're being delivered to. For the respite care trials, there is 1 in Hawke's Bay with Dementia Hawke's Bay in partnership with the Wairua Charitable Trust. They're doing a Māori Active Brain Day program. And in the South Island, we have a really large respite care program, which is a collaboration across, I think it's 8 organisations. It's kind of like a pan-South Island home share respite care program. This will be delivered in Otago, South Canterbury, Marlborough, Nelson, and the West Coast. This is a massive, ambitious program, and we'll all be watching this very closely and supporting this organisation to make this a really successful program. And having said that, we'll be doing that with all of the trials, of course. So the next steps are supporting implementation of the trials and working with them to look at how we can provide support to integrate the trials where there are providers that have delivered Mate Wareware services, but they're expanding and increasing their range of services with the existing dementia providers and primary care and community providers in their areas, where communicating and facilitating linkages across the sector. We're starting the process of looking into the evaluation of these trials, and we'll be having an independent evaluation of them. And just for your information, reporting, each provider will be submitting a half-yearly report on their program, and on a quarterly basis, Te Whatu and Te Ora will be having sort of Zoom meetings with each provider to discuss their program and their progress.
Thank you, Julie, for that, that update. It was great.